Rich sister-in-law framed me for stealing. She didn't know my niece was Liv. Motor oil never really washes out. You can scrub your hands with pumice soap until the skin is raw and bleeding, but look close enough, and you'll always see the faint, dark lines mapped into the creases of your knuckles. For 25 years, those stained hands were my pride. They rebuilt transmissions, swapped out blown engines, and kept my independent auto shop running. More importantly, those hands paid for my younger brother's college tuition after our folks passed away. I practically raised Robert. I bought him his first tailored suit for his real estate licensing exam, while I wore a pair of boots held together by duct tape. I thought blood was thicker than water, but as I stood in the foyer of his $5 million Connecticut estate on Thanksgiving Day, I realized that blood doesn't mean a damn thing when it's up against a checking account with 7 zeros. The air inside Robert's house didn't smell like roasted turkey or pumpkin pie. It smelled like expensive sage candles and sterile wealth. I had parked my 10-year-old Chevy Silverado at the very end of the long, circular driveway, making sure it was hidden behind a row of manicured hedges so it wouldn't offend the lineup of Mercedes and Range Rovers belonging to Valerie's family. Valerie, my sister-in-law. A woman who looked at me not like I was her husband's brother, but like I was a stray dog that had wandered onto her pristine white carpets. "Thomas," Valerie said, her voice dripping with that fake, high society sweetness as I walked in. She was wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my mortgage. Her eyes immediately darted to my boots. I had spent an hour polishing them, but to her, they were still just work boots. "So glad you could make the drive. We weren't sure your truck would make it this far up the hills." "It runs fine, Val. Happy Thanksgiving," I said, holding out a bottle of red wine. It was a $40 bottle, a splurge for me, but as she took it with 2 fingers and handed it immediately to the hired caterer, I knew it would be poured down the sink before dessert. Robert came around the corner a moment later. He looked sharp, impeccably groomed, wearing a cashmere sweater and a heavy, gleaming silver watch. We used to wrestle in the dirt. Now he hesitated before giving me a stiff, one-armed pat on the shoulder, careful not to let my jacket touch his clothes. "Hey, Tommy, glad you're here. Go grab a drink, mingle." He didn't look me in the eye. That was the first twist of the knife. He was embarrassed of me in his own home. The only genuine warmth came from a small, blonde hurricane that barreled into my knees. "Uncle Tommy." It was Lily, my 10-year-old niece. She didn't care about the grease stains or the cheap jacket. She just knew I was the guy who could fix her bicycle chain and make quarters disappear behind her ear. "Hey there, squirt," I laughed, scooping her up for a quick hug. I noticed she was holding her smartphone mounted on a little pink tripod. "What's with the camera setup?" "I'm a content creator now, Uncle Tommy," she said proudly. "I'm doing a day in the life Thanksgiving vlog for my TikTok followers. Mom says I have to build my personal brand." I smiled, shaking my head at the absurdity of a 10-year-old needing a brand, and let her run off to film the appetizer table. Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive torture. I was seated at the far end of the long mahogany table, surrounded by Valerie's cousins and a few of Robert's wealthy developer friends. The conversation revolved around stock portfolios, winter homes in Aspen, and country club memberships. Every time I tried to speak, Valerie would subtly steer the conversation back to money. At one point, she loudly asked, "So, Thomas, how is that little garage of yours holding up? Are people still driving those old beaters? Or is everyone finally upgrading to electric?" The table chuckled. I swallowed my pride, took a bite of dry turkey, and smiled politely. I was doing this for Robert. I was doing this for family. After dinner, the men moved to the living room to watch football while the women gathered on the patio with their wine. Robert went to the downstairs powder room to wash up. When he came back out, he was rolling down his sleeves. 30 minutes later, the atmosphere in the house shattered. Valerie came marching into the living room, her face pale, her eyes wide with manufactured panic. "Robert, your watch. Where is it?" Robert looked confused, glancing at his bare left wrist. "Oh, I took it off when I was washing my hands in the powder room. I left it on the marble counter so I wouldn't get soap in the links." "I just went in there," Valerie said, her voice rising an octave, ensuring every single guest in the house stopped what they were doing to listen. "It's not there." "What do you mean it's not there?" Robert stood up. "It's a Rolex Daytona, Val. It doesn't just walk away." The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop on the hardwood floor. Valerie's gaze slowly swept across the room, past her wealthy cousins, past the successful developers, and locked dead onto me. "Well," Valerie said, her voice a lethal whisper that somehow echoed off the vaulted ceilings. "It didn't walk away. Someone took it. And considering the guest list, there's only one person in this house who is desperate enough for cash to pocket a $40,000 watch." I felt the blood drain from my face. I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Valerie, are you accusing me of stealing?" "I didn't name any names, Thomas," she sneered, crossing her arms. "But you've been complaining about the rent at your shop all year, and you were the only one who used that hallway restroom after Robert. I saw you walk out of it." It was true. I had gone to wash my hands 10 minutes ago, but I hadn't seen any watch. I didn't take his watch. I would never steal from my brother. I practically raised him. "Oh, here comes the guilt trip," Valerie scoffed, turning to the crowd. "He always plays the martyr card when he's backed into a corner." I looked at Robert, my brother, the boy I had worked 80-hour weeks for. I waited for him to step in, to shut his wife down, to defend my honor. I waited for him to say, "My brother is not a thief." Robert looked at the floor. He looked at Valerie's furious face. And then he looked at me with cold, calculating eyes. "Tommy," Robert said quietly, "if you took it as a joke, just give it back. No harm, no foul." The air in my lungs vanished. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it felt like a physical blow to the chest. "Robert," I choked out, "you know me. You know I didn't do this." "I know that watch is worth more than your shop, Tommy," Robert replied, his voice hardening, trying to perform for his rich friends. "And I know it's missing, so let's just clear the air. Empty your pockets." A collective gasp went through the room. I was a 50-year-old man, standing in a room full of strangers, being ordered to strip down like a common criminal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk out the front door and never look back. But if I left now, I would be branded a thief forever. Valerie would win. With shaking hands, I reached into my jeans. I pulled out my worn leather wallet and tossed it on the coffee table. I pulled out a ring of keys with a spark plug keychain. I pulled out a crumpled receipt from a hardware store. "The jacket, too," Valerie demanded, her eyes glittering with a sick, triumphant joy. He could easily hide it in the lining. Tears of pure humiliation pricked the corners of my eyes. I took off my cheap, dark blue blazer and handed it to my brother. Robert meticulously patted down the pockets, the lining, the sleeves. Nothing. He handed it back, looking slightly unnerved. "He probably hid it in his truck," Valerie announced instantly, unwilling to let the execution stop. "Robert, get his keys. Go search that rusted piece of junk." "Enough," I finally yelled, the anger boiling over the shame. "You've humiliated me in front of your friends. You've treated me like garbage since the moment I walked in. I am done. Keep the keys, search the truck, I don't care. I'll walk home." I turned toward the foyer, my vision blurry. I just needed to get out of that toxic house. But as I reached for the front door handle, a small, trembling voice stopped me dead in my tracks. "Mom, why is Uncle Tommy crying?" Everyone turned. Lily was standing on the landing of the grand staircase. In her left hand, she was holding her smartphone on its little pink tripod, the screen glowing brightly. In her right hand, she was holding Valerie's iconic, dark red Hermes Birkin bag. "Lily, go back to your room," Valerie snapped, her composure cracking for the first time. "The adults are dealing with a situation." "But Mom," Lily said, walking slowly down the stairs. "I was upstairs in your bedroom looking for my cherry lip balm. I looked in your purse, but I didn't find my lip balm." Lily reached her small hand into the zippered side pocket of the Birkin bag. She pulled her hand out and held it up. Dangling from her tiny fingers, gleaming under the chandelier light, was the heavy silver Rolex Daytona. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a bomb going off. "I found Daddy's watch," Lily said innocently, looking at her mother. "Why did you hide Daddy's watch in your purse, Mom? Were you trying to play a trick on Uncle Tommy?" Valerie's face turned the color of ash. She lunged forward, her hands outstretched. "Give me that, Lily. You don't know what you're talking about. I was I was keeping it safe. No, you weren't. Lily stepped back, holding the phone up higher. The red, live, icon was flashing brightly in the corner of the screen. You said you didn't know where it was. You called Uncle Tommy a bad name. Robert stared at the watch in his daughter's hand, then slowly turned his head to look at his wife. The realization hit him like a freight train. There was no misunderstanding. There was no accidental misplacement. His wife had deliberately stolen his watch and hidden it in her own purse solely to frame his brother, to humiliate me so completely that I would never come back. Valerie, Robert whispered, his voice trembling with horror. What did you do? But it got worse. So much worse. Guys, Lily said, looking down at her phone screen, her brow furrowed. A lot of people are typing. Mrs. Henderson says you're a monster, Mom. And Mr. Vance says he's taking his listings to another broker. Valerie froze. Lily, what is that? Who are you talking to? My followers, Lily said simply. I told you I'm doing a live vlog. I left the phone running on the stairs because I wanted to get a shot of everyone in the living room. It's been broadcasting the whole time. The room erupted. Valerie let out a guttural shriek and lunged for the phone, but Robert intercepted her, grabbing her by the arms. The wealthy guests, the very people Valerie had tried so desperately to impress, were backing away in absolute disgust. They had just watched a live feed of a wealthy socialite attempting to frame an innocent, hard-working man, all broadcast directly to the local community, their country club members, and Robert's high-end real estate clients. Turn it off, Valerie screamed, sobbing hysterically as Robert wrestled the phone away from Lily and ended the stream. But on the internet, live is forever. The damage was permanently, irrevocably done. Robert looked at me. His eyes were red, filled with tears of regret and shame. He held the watch in one hand and my cheap blazer in the other. Tommy, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know. I looked at him and I didn't see the boy I raised. I saw a coward. You didn't know she hid it? I said, my voice eerily calm, cutting through Valerie's frantic sobbing. But you knew me. You knew I would never steal. And when she told you to search me like a dog, you didn't hesitate. You made your choice, Robert. I walked over to Lily. I knelt down and gave her a gentle, tight hug. Thank you, Squirt. You've got more integrity in your pinky finger than anyone else in this house. Keep making your videos. I stood up, grabbed my keys off the table, and walked out the front door. The cold November air hit my face, and for the first time all day, I could breathe. By the time I reached my truck, my phone was buzzing. The video had already been screen recorded and posted to the local Facebook community groups. It was spreading like wildfire. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was spectacular. The internet does not forgive people who punch down. Valerie became a local pariah. She was asked to step down from the PDA and her country club board. Robert's real estate firm took a massive hit. Nobody wanted to do business with a man who let his wife frame his own flesh and blood. They ended up having to put that $5 million house on the market just to cover the lost commissions. Robert called me every day for a month, leaving voicemails, begging for forgiveness, offering to buy me a new shop. I never answered. You can't buy back loyalty. But I did get a package in the mail a few weeks before Christmas. It was from Lily. Inside was a drawing of me fixing her bike, and a note that said she missed me. I hung it up in my garage right above my toolbox. Sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from a 10-year-old girl with a smartphone, a clear conscience, and the courage to expose the truth while the adults are too busy playing dress-up.